Now that you have your engine mounted in your car, let's find what transmission is correct for your vehicle. My recommendation, if you guys are just starting this build, maybe don't want to spend a ton of money or delay your project, you could just put your factory trans back in there. To put that trans in there, if you could keep it in the same spot, then that'll save you from having to make the drive shaft and the new shifter linkages, which will save you a ton of time of having to cut the floor up. If you'd like to have great bottom end, great cruising on the highway, run a 6L80 or 6L90. Those are very good. If you're making a ton of power, I would recommend using a Power Glide. They're super reliable, ultimate bulletproof transmission. But if you're running just a kind of cruise around the city, just NA setup, 4L60 is just the classic go-to transmission. And for those of you who an automatic transmission just doesn't sound that great, or you want those amazing sounds, rolling those gears, feeling that power, definitely run a TR6060. Those are going to be the top annual trans for you, 6-speed. For those of you running an LT Gen 5 engine, you have two more transmission options. You have the 8L transmission and the 10L, which is a 10-speed automatic, which has amazing low end and amazing double overdrive. Definitely going to be cutting your floor up for that, so plan on a little bit more time. Let's go over how to connect your LS engine to your old school Chevy transmission. So there's 4 options to be aware of. You have the oddball ones like an LS9, which has a 9-bolt crankshaft. You have the 8-bolt crankshaft, which is in your LSAs, or your Gen 5 LTs also run the same one. Then you have your 99 and 2000 year only for the 6 liters. Those had a longer crankshaft, so those need a 6-bolt crank, but it has a flat flex plate, so this one's dished. All of your other engines that are going to be just your standard 6-bolt, they're going to be this dished flex plate, so you'll see there's kind of this dished shape that's not flat. This is going to be probably 99% of you guys out there swapping is going to run this dish. Ideally, if you did this correctly, you would just buy the torque converter for your engine, and then you wouldn't need to adapt any of this or use a crankshaft spacer. We do this plenty of times here, just use the flex plate that's made to adapt your small block, big block Chevy pattern, and then you add this crankshaft spacer. So this spacer basically extends the length of the LS crankshaft. That way it lines up with the hub of your torque converter. That way it aligns on that center and doesn't walk around while the bolts are holding it in place. If you're using a LT engine, we have these two. LT, you can see here, has an 8-bolt pattern. This is the exact same as LSA. So if you have an LSA engine, it's the same as an LT. If you're gonna do any kind of racing, we would strongly recommend using our Billet flex plate. This thing is rated for 20,000 RPM, which is insane, and like 3,500 horse. So it's a Billet steel one. These things are indestructible. Highly recommend this if you like keeping your legs and you don't want your flywheel to go through the transmission case. If you look at our guide here, you can see which flex plate to use with the 99 and 2000. For the other models, just follow the chart here that's available on our website. Now to attach your flex plate, if you're switching these out, we have the standard length, which is for your normal flex plates, or you have an extended length if you're running a little bit like a thicker, like a flywheel, like on a manual transmission, you would want the longer ones, or if you had a spacer in there.
Today we're going to be looking into intakes, throttle bodies, and what to choose for your build. I know it sounds simple, swapping intakes on your LS build. Poor choices can lead to mismatched ports, poor airflow, and terrible throttle response. Here are some things to consider when making that decision. The number one thing you want to consider is your head's port shape. Do you have cathedral ports? Do you have rectangle ports? Do you have raised port heads? Mismatched ports don't just look bad, they kill airflow and they rob power. You really want to match your intake port to your head port. Now, if you have an intake you've got a really good deal on, or you really just want to use it in your build but it doesn't match your head port shape, we have options for you. We make these billet adapters that'll adapt any port to any head that you need. The next thing you're going to want to be aware of is intake height. Yes, I know that tall intake looks sick and you really want to run it, but if you can't close the hood, what's the point? Trucks have plenty of room, but Camaros, not so much. You're gonna want to measure twice before you buy something. Shorter intakes like this LS3 intake or LS6 intakes work great in tighter engine bays. Another thing you're going to want to think about is your throttle body. If you're switching intakes, are you taking the throttle body that came on the intake? Are you keeping the throttle body that was on your vehicle? Those are all options you got to think about. Luckily, we have all the adapters and the wiring harnesses you would need to convert any throttle body to any intake. Finally, let's discuss how your choice of intake is going to affect your entire power band. Long runner intakes like this fast intake are great for low end torque and work really well on the street and for cruisers, while these short runner intakes like this LS3 intake have really good high end power and are great for drag or track build. Think about how you're going to be driving your car, not just what looks good in the engine bay.
Two main differences in the LS oil pan. So the difference between a wet and a dry sump, the actual sump itself. So this lower section here is the sump where all the oil drains from the engine down into here, and all of the oil is kept in this sump. So on the dry sump engine, the oil pan is much shorter. It's almost like this height all the way across. So the oil is actually stored in a separate reservoir. That'd be like on your Z06, like an LS7, LS9 Corvettes, or Grand Sport Corvettes. Those are all dry sump. The rest of the models, they were all wet sump. So the wet sump is going to be the simplest because all of the oil is kept here. There's no separate tanks or lines. The most common out of the LS oil pans that you're going to see in most of your junkyards is going to be this truck oil pan here. So this one's easy to tell because it's really tall here. So the distance from the oil pan rail to the bottom of the pan. This one is pretty good for frame clearance. So there's a lot of space in here for a frame rail because this isn't real bulky. The problem is this sump is too deep. So if you're in, say, a first gen Camaro, your frame rail might be around here. This much of your oil pan is hanging down below the frame. Anything in the roadway can like hit the oil pan, damage it, rip a hole through it. It'd be not such a good day. Here's like a muscle car pan, changes the dimension a little bit. This sump area is a little narrower. This is a 98 to 02 Camaro. You can see here, this area is huge. So a lot of your swaps, your frame rails are gonna be in this area. So this usually isn't an option for you. What typically works well on a lot of the swaps is like these Holley oil pans. So this is a 302-2 oil pan. So if you look here, this sump area is a lot shorter. And then this area here has a lot of clearance. So this is really small, quite a bit of space here. This will work in a lot of swap vehicles. For the most part, the oil dipsticks are gonna remain the same. They're gonna check the oil at the same height in the oil pan rail. So those don't always need switched with your oil pan. We do sell the plugs. If you have a LS2 style pan, the dipstick actually goes into the pan directly. So on most LS engines, the oil dipstick goes into the engine block and then it sticks through and measures the oil into the pan. If you go to our website's tips and guides section, you can see all of our oil pans with all the dimensions on there. It makes it very easy to measure with a tape measure how much clearance you actually need for your oil pan and which one's gonna fit your vehicle. Don't let the wrong bracket ruin your day. So we get asked all the time, how do I tell which accessory bracket is the right one for my application? So this is simple. You would just start with the constraints of the vehicle that you're putting the brackets in. So let's say in this example, you're running a 1986 Chevy C10, little square body. So on this truck, there's tons of room in front of the engine. So you have dash 1, which is Corvette, dash 2, LS1 Camaro, dash 3 is truck accessories, which move the accessories furthest from the front of the engine. On our bracket quick find guide, if you look at the crank pulley, you'll see the dash numbers available for that bracket. Those are the options available for that particular bracket part number, which is located right above the engine. There's the part number right there. Once you know the vehicle that you're going in, this is going to determine what brackets can be next to the engine on the right and left side of it, passenger driver side. So then we need to know the vehicle's purpose. So if this is a drag race application, typically you might have a belt drive fuel pump or even a remote water pump. That's going to change how the accessories fit on the front of the block and which ones you're going to use. If it's just going to be a cruiser like the setup we're doing here, this one we would just use the vehicle's factory power steering pump, which will retain the feel that you would have on your steering wheel from the factory. Ideally, you're going to keep those. It just makes this simpler and not change the pressure and the feel of your steering. So if you see the guide here, we have the power steering pump down low, alternator alternator right above it. These will be our bracket part numbers that we're gonna use for the alt power steering. And then for the AC, pick that one out. That'll be the part number, pair those two together. And now you have the correct brackets for your application. To find your perfect bracket for your application, go to ictbillet.com and then go under the swap guides and look at LS Bracket Finder Guide to see what all is available for your application. That way you get it right the first time, every time. Welcome back to the series. Today we're going to go over tools for your LS build and torque specs. So let's go over some of the common tools you're going to need for your LS build. So some of the tools here in front of me are the common things I like to use. One, a lot of times, especially Gen 3 engines, you're going to have broken exhaust bolts. So to get those out, usually I'll mark the center of the bolt and then drill into that bolt a little ways and then use a number 2 easy out. This works great to get a lot of those bolts out. Kind of moving on, most of the time we're going to swap the camshaft in it. So we have various camshaft tools. This one here for the Gen 4 cams. This will help you get your camshaft in and out without tearing up your bearings. We like to change the valve springs with the cam. So those, we use one of 2 different tools. You either use this style here, where you just kind of bolt it on, it rocks down, or this trick flow one we like using as well, and that just kind of smushes down both springs at a time. But once you get it in, measuring the push rod length, you degree the cam. So there's other various tools used to measure the cam heights. Then once that is in place, you're gonna put the cylinder heads on and we're gonna torque that down with the torque wrench. If you're using like ARP studs or 0.1s, then we have our torque angle tool. This here is a must-have if you're using any of the stock bolts on the LS engine for the cylinder head or for the balancer. Those GM specs those out in angle. Then to put your timing cover on the front, you're gonna slide this over the crankshaft and then your front cover will align to this tool. It'll just kind of float here on this tool when you have the seal on it. And then you tighten your cover down, that way it's aligned with your crankshaft. And then on the rear main cover, we're gonna use this one as well. Basically the same process on the back. You slide this cover on, it aligns with the back cover, and then you tighten it down. That way it's in place and it's aligned with your crankshaft. That way your seals don't prematurely wear. Also, tip on there too, when you put in the rear and front main seals, you're gonna wanna put a little bit of sealer, some kind of RTV in there. I like using the Art-Rite stuff, just underneath that seal around the cover. That way those seals don't spin, because those are a known issue on the GM covers. Valve seal tool, so this helps you slide those seals on the valves. And other tools here to put the power steering pulley on. You're gonna need one of these and to get it off, so these could be tricky. Definitely gonna need a tool for that. So also to get your balancer back on, you're gonna need this tool to slide that balancer back into place. And to remove your one that's on it currently, you're gonna use these factory style removers. This one here is just like a 3-jaw, so it just kind of hooks onto the back of your balancer, and then the bolt here pulls that away from your crankshaft. That tool is definitely very needed. And then once you get it back on, you'll go back to this one. If you guys already have an engine built and you have an ATI pulley on, we'll use one of these pullers. Slightly different, but it just uses the 3 bolts to grab the hub, and it removes the hub only. And while you're doing the balancer, it takes a lot of torque to get that thing in place. So unless you're blasting that thing on with impact wrench and giving a bunch of ugga-duggas, to torque it correctly, you're gonna use this flywheel holding tool. So this is gonna bolt in place where your starter is, and it's gonna grab the teeth of your flex plate or flywheel. That way it cannot move and you can apply all that torque to it. So for your transmission, tools I like using on that, a little trick to it is when you're underneath the car and you got the transmission bolted on, always shove the pry bar up into the teeth of the flex plate or the flywheel, and I just kind of like grab it down low and just like push up. Then you can just rotate your engine really easy like that. Easiest way to do that is get the engine in place, let the transmission hang down a little bit, use one of these really long extensions and a swivel socket, and this will be the easiest way to put the bell housing bolts in. This is a 13 millimeter. There's a couple 15 millimeter bolts that I like using this one to use it from the front of the engine. That way I could get to the torque converter bolts, and this will reach all the way through to the front of the engine past the accessories. Then for your fuel lines, so if you're removing an engine from an LS vehicle or if you're taking it back apart again, these tools I like using. One, always use the metal ones, don't use the plastic ones. They like to break. You're gonna need a 5/16 on the older vehicles. The newer ones only have the 3/8. These are little spring-loaded ones. Just remember, whenever you're loosening the fuel line, tip to that is push the two line sections together, because if it's back and it's tight against the lock won't release. And then you're gonna clip this tool around it and then push this tool forward. And then once that's forward, you just pull the whole assembly back. Fuel line pops right off there. Another thing I like using too, one, if you're setting fuel pressure or you're troubleshooting issues, fuel pressure gauge, gonna be very helpful there. Another troubleshooting one I like using too. If it's not starting, is it getting spark? So super simple, just plug your wire on here, clip it, crank the engine. You could have this set to where you can look through the windshield and see if you're getting spark out there. And then if all else fails, big friggin' hammer, we could just have a little chat with her and make her start. So for the torque specs used on the LS engine, head over to our website, click the swap guides section, then click LS swap guides, and then torque specs. In here, you'll find all the torque specs needed for your LS build and the torque sequence for your cylinder heads. Makes this super easy. Everything's in one place. Welcome back to the series. Today we're gonna go over helpful tips to make sure your engine starts the first time. So common things to make your engine not start, things that I've experienced myself, like the VAT's not getting properly deleted, the transmission range selector isn't reading, or the transmission, you may be starting it before your shifter's even hooked up. Make sure that thing is in park. Make sure your transmission connector is fully plugged in and locked. Those will definitely make it not even crank. If you didn't get your starter signal hooked up to your key, that one will make a no start. Ground wires being off will make it if your engine is cranking but not firing. Those are common to not have all the grounds on the back of the cylinder heads. A lot of times those get left off just because they're kind of out of sight. Fuel lines are backwards. We've seen the regulators get plumbed backwards. If you key on your vehicle and you hear the fuel pump going, you may think, oh, I've got fuel. Keep that in mind. You may have got the regulator backwards and you're not getting any fuel at all to the rail. One way to check that is run a fuel pressure gauge on the rail. You definitely want to make sure that the fuel pump is coming on. The ECMs, sometimes the factory computers are bad about not sending the signal to kick on the fuel pump. If that's the case, just check your wiring, make sure everything's in place there. Make sure that when you key it forward, you do hear the pump run. You should hear that come up and pressure up the fuel rail. If you mix the banks of your ignition coil plugs, that main harness, if you get those on the wrong side, definitely make a no start. Make sure your battery is plenty charged, because if the voltage is too low, it'll crank, but it won't fire. So you need enough voltage, so make sure you keep the battery on a charger. That way, when you're ready to crank it, you've got enough power. Have the brake booster line off, so you have that big vacuum leak in your intake. That could also make it not start. If you have the wrong injector size selected in your tune, that'll definitely make a no start situation, or if you have the wrong tune even selected. Hopefully these tips helped you get your car started the first time, so you don't have to throw tools across the shop in frustration when this thing doesn't start. We're always a phone call away. We'd love to help you on your build, so call us today and max your swap with ICT.